Hello, YouTube, and welcome back. More so, welcome back to me. It's been a little bit. Was busy commentating the Africa TV Valorant League, which just happened. Tons of fun. Congrats to Sentinels lifting up their international trophy here in 2023. But really good games. If you missed it, definitely go check out the VODs. A lot of it was very fun. Some very close matches as well. Tons of overtime. But amidst all of that, in the past 2 weeks, we've had pretty much the rest of the roster announcements coming out for VCT Pacific, including a very last minute one right after the AVL regarding DRX. So we want to take a look at, okay, now how do all the teams look? Where do we think each other stack, etc.? So let's dive right in. We have our sheet here. Let me zoom out so you guys can see it, right? We've got all 10 teams. We've got their 23 roster and then their 24 roster coming up. And we'll just go down the list. We won't go in order, but this does mean we'll go a little bit in reverse order of timing, because right after the AVL, which DRX played with the original core 5 of Buzz, RB, Stax, Mako, and Zest, DRX made an announcement. First, it was the announcement saying Flashback has been called up to the main roster from the Academy team. So that's the kind of Viper specialist that was playing with DRX during a lot of the other offseason tournaments. A lot of people were like, okay, they're giving Flashback, a little bit of time and experience. That's cool. I thought that was very cool. I had figured they would go back to this core 5 during the AVL because it's in front of a Seoul, crowd in Seoul. And I just assumed that's what they would be sticking with for 2024. But it turns out that wasn't it. Flashback was being trained up because they wanted to be on the main squad. So Flashback and Foxy9 will be entering the starting roster. And then they immediately afterwards announced that RB and Zest are now going into the reserves and being restricted free agents, aka they're not going to be playing. Big news, huge news for DRX. The first question a lot of people have is this a good move? And I think a lot of people around the world are in the same boat, where I've seen several comments around different platforms saying, I've always wanted DRX to make a change, and now that they have, I don't know how to feel about it. Which I think is very fair. I think it's very fair, right? Because, sure, I think most DRX fans always wanted a change, but then if you had to be put on the spot of so who would you change? It was always tough to single any one person out, right? Everyone had their clear value, right? Buzz, obviously, very fairly flexible and a really good rifle entry player. His ops been getting better and better. Mako, sturdy as a rock on that controller, great tanker down a sight. RB, really, really flexible and had a bit of a resurgence here in 2023. Zest, whenever he came back in, he was always playing better. His Sova has always had some insane lineups and good execs. The Viper looked very reliable as well. And then Stax, probably the most shaky in terms of individual mechanics, but his calling seems to be getting better, and he does have clutch genes, so there is that. Okay, it's always, it's always a question of well, who would you change? I don't know. It's kind of tough. To me, the question wasn't so much who, it was just how many, right? I never believed that changing out one player would fix their problems, if indeed it was kind of a team thing. If they just needed change, it had to be more than one. And now they've done that. So personally, I think this is good. Does this mean, do I think this will make them perform better in 2024? Not really. Probably not. I think it'd be very impressive if they did. I think we have to put this into perspective. I think if they brought in Foxy9 and Flashback, two very young players, Flashback, no tier 1 experience, Foxy9, some in VCT Pacific, but, not enough that we all thought he was given a very fair chance, right? So you bring in two very young guys and very green guys, and then if you performed better, clearly then the chemistry and comms are just through the roof, and Foxy9 and Flashback are just goated players. Otherwise, I think it'd be very tough for us to expect them to perform or get better results. I think that'd be very hard to do. I think they could potentially get consistent results, right? Especially within Pacific. But the reason I think this is good is because this is a very big change, and to me it's because it's not a short-term change, right? You have to kind of be thinking long-term if you're going to make a change like this, and you're expecting bigger things and bigger or higher ceilings through this roster change. So I think it's exciting. I'm not going to get my hopes up about the results, right? I think the results could be very volatile for this team, but I think it is much more promising. The big question now is who's going to be playing Duelist? Is it going to still be Buzz, or will Foxy9 go back to playing Duelist and Buzz goes back to being a flex, initiator? If that was the case, he'd probably be Flash initiator, and Stacks would probably go to Intel and things like that, and Flashback. Maybe Buzz flexes double Duelist and Flashback flexes here and there. There's a multitude of options here. I guess at that point, someone has to play Sentinel as well. So, Buzz has played, lots of Killjoy. He can play Chamber. So there are some options. Personally, I would love to see Buzz stay as the Duelist. I know Foxy9's performance at the offseason events on things like the KO were not very promising, but hopefully it's something they can work on. I just think Buzz as a entry player is so good. I think Buzz as an entry is so good. But there are some options. But that's a good thing too, right? They have some options now. So hopefully they can sort it out during their scrims. Overall, though, I think it's a step in the right direction. I do not think it will bring better results in 2024. I think that's too much to hope for. I think that'd be really impressive given the power level of Pacific right now. But I do think it's exciting. So it's very sad to see RB and Zest be replaced, right? Two guys who have been around since the beginning, were part of the Vision Strikers era, were big highlights of the Vision Strikers era. So it is an end of an era for sure, but hopefully this new chapter is a longer, greater chapter here for DRX. So we'll have to wait and see. I will just one more thing though. But hey, the fact that they are bringing up these players from their academy and from their scouting reports is good, right? They're trying to continue to build and create a channel for Korean talent to be homegrown, which I think is very good. All right, T1, we talked about Rossi 2 weeks ago when he was announced. They recently played the AVL with this starting five, which was a little confusing. Originally, I thought it was going to be Zeta in here instead of Izu. Back then, I made that assumption just based on language barrier, right? Carpe still having a lot of English experience, and Zeta as well. I thought that would be the core five, but they have made it very clear that Izu, Saya Player, Carpe, Rossi, and Excurit will be the starting five. And guess what? They looked good. They looked very good. I thought Carpe's calling was fine. They've talked about it in the interviews, right? Everyone's contributing, etc. Carpe is just kind of the anchor, the rock that is able to make these bigger decisions, etc. But I thought Carpe's calling in general seemed very good. He also, just listening to the comms and stuff, he seemed to be keeping that good environment going where people can chime in. Seems like Rossi is continuing to be a big part of the comms. Seems like Excurit actually is speaking his mind a lot, which is good to see. So that's good. They look very promising. And then Gen.G, another roster announcement that we didn't get to talk about during this 2-week break. They announced Charon as their fifth. Now, everyone's had big questions about Charon. Who in the world is this guy? Where did he come from? What in the world is going on? Because if you go and search up Charon, we see that he's played some qualifiers. And that's about it. They did not make it, right? They lost. There's no VODs. We don't know what's going on with this guy. Clearly, he's bouncing around different roles. That's cool. If we look at his overall history of these very few matches, primarily seems to be playing some Duelists, but some Killjoy as well. So there's some flexibility. But other than that, we don't really know anything. I don't really know anything about Charon. So I asked around, and I was told by people close to Charon and the team that basically the information we have in public is about all that is out there, right? It's not like there's some other hidden gem of information floating around about Charon. Literally, there's not much to go off of publicly. The only thing is that he used to be ranked very high, and he used to duo with, what was his name? Incheon Zayu, one of the top ranked players in Korea. And so, he was a solo queue monster. He was a solo queue competitive monster, and Gen.G picked him up. Oh, and then the biggest thing about Karon is he's already completed his military service, despite being, I believe, the youngest player here on this roster. And that's a big deal. That's a big deal, as we are just witnessing with Jing. For any player that lives in a country that has mandatory military service, it's rough, right? It's rough because your future isn't guaranteed. You have to take a break at some point. Some countries you can still delay it. There are some options to do that in Korea as well, but at some point your career has to be put on hold, and that's rough for both the player and the team. But Karon already completed his military service, so he is dedicated to the long run as long as he wishes, and if he can keep up the skill level. So that's very promising, and that's really good news for Gen.G as an org. Now, other than being told that his individual mechanics are very good, we don't know much else. So, do I think Karon makes this roster stronger? I have no idea. But I do think it's very exciting. I think it's very exciting, right? First of all, you have 4 really, really solid veterans within the Korean Valorant scene. I mean, all 4 have been playing since the beginning in some shape or form. You've got several players that have gone, and you've got several players who have gone to international tournaments. Well, I guess technically with lock-in having happened earlier this year, now everyone who's ever been part of the partner league would have had international experience. So Texture gets his share as well. Munchkin obviously used to travel to every international tournament as Crazy Raccoons back in Japan. Lakia has his experience with New Turn, and then he's also been playing, he played a little bit in Japan as well. He used to play for D plus Kia earlier this year for Challengers, Korea, Meteor, of course, back on reception as well. So they've all been to international tournaments. Some of them have experience in other games as well. They've played across very different rosters, and now they're coming together. So I think if Coach HSK can be the glue for this team, there is some good promise. You've got 4 solid veterans. You've got all 4 of them have clutch genes. We've seen that time and time again. Got some flexibility in role. And then you've got a solo queue monster who doesn't have to do military service anymore, who can be grown for the long run. Very promising for the roster. Big question, what do the roles look like? We're about to find out in Convergence this weekend, but if I had to guess ahead of the matches, I would assume Meteor still stays as the primary duelist, as the Jet, right? And then, maybe sometimes Chamber if they want, as basically really the primary opper, but a lot of times that's going to be the Jet here, which I think would put Texture back onto Sentinel. Munchkin can also play Sentinel as well, but I think Texture might be better suited for the Sentinel, whereas Munchkin, he's really been flexing around everywhere. Lakia would definitely be sticking with the Intel initiators, in my opinion, so the Sovas, the Fades, and then if it's single initiator, the Sky. And then Munchkin flexing around, maybe for some double controller, etc. Now, there's a big question of if Karon is able to pick up the flex role and has a deeper agent pool. There is a question to be had that Karon could be the flex and Munchkin is the dedicated controller. I could see that. But otherwise, I don't see a lot of other options. One, I think that is not based on any facts, but I do think would be crazy, and I could see it, is Texture becoming the main controller. I could see that. And then Karon being the main Sentinel. Munchkin Flex, Lakia, Info. I can see that. But that's a little bit, that's not really based on anything. But yeah, I mean, again, these different combinations, if I can see them in my head, so I think that's good. That's a good sign for this team. Personally, I'm excited to see how this team does, and I hope that no matter the actual placing they do, I hope their gameplay shows us a lot of what Coach HSK is able to do. Obviously, he had a very rough year with DFM, but the Korean FPS, tactical FPS community and traditional FPS community has a lot of faith in HSK, right? As a veteran, used to be a pro player back in CS, finished his military service. Now he's back in Valorant. Now he's coaching. A lot of these ex-players and people within the Korean community seem to have a lot of respect for HSK and still have hopes for him to be this good leader. And, help continue to grow the Korean scene. So I just personally hope this is one of those teams where we can start to see that ooze out in the gameplay itself. But yeah, overall, I mean, again, I talked about it when we were doing the rankings prior, but this team's ranking wasn't going to change depending on who they brought in here. This 4 was kind of the rock solid core, and it's a pretty good core. So I'm pretty excited for Gen.G. But again, we'll see them this weekend at Convergence. So we'll get our first look. Team Secret, we talked about NDG. They have not played anything here in the offseason, and I have not heard that they will be playing anything here in December yet either. Zeta, they continued to play at the Riot 1 Invitational. Continue to look pretty good. Pretty good. Depp came back and played. He was farming. So that's good. But not enough to instill like any sort of confidence that they're going to be like top 2, top 3 consistently. I think that still awaits to be seen. R&Q, again, no new changes. Still haven't played anything in the offseason, so a little bit of a mystery box there, but I personally still have high hopes. And then GE, of course, the announcement came out a little while ago, but they will finally be playing at Convergence. Unfortunately, without Benkai. He can't make it to the event, so they will be playing with Skills, a player who used to be part of the old GE roster, the OG roster. So their performance at Convergence, take it with a grain of salt. However, I have been told that they haven't been looking the greatest. Okay? They haven't been looking the greatest. Now, I haven't like cross-checked my sources, so take it with a grain of salt. But I think maybe temper your expectations a little bit. I think we could talk about global esports. Maybe we'll do another separate video, but I do want to plant this out there now that we're talking about, the expectations here for GE. I do want to give a lot of credit to GE as an org, because it does seem like they're really trying to figure out a way to really keep this sustainable, right? This whole venture of esports and running a team. And in terms of their roster, it does. I'm making speculations here, right? Just off of the bits and pieces I've picked up from the team themselves and elsewise. But it does seem like they're trying to kind of go the loud route, right? Of make a sustainable environment. And if the players get better deals, like they go elsewhere, like that's fine. It is what it is, right? Which I think is good. I think it's very good. I think it's necessary. But obviously with that, there comes a lot of trial and error. So I think it's worth tempering your expectations a little bit in terms of results, but hopefully they can find their groove. Again, we'll get a slight look at Convergence, but it's without the core 5, so it's just a little taste. Talon. They made the crazy curveball announcement of Lenny, Ban, and Governor coming in to join this team. And they played at Clash of Nations. It didn't look great. I mean, it didn't look outright terrible, but it didn't look great. They did not win. They also got manhandled on Haven by FullSense, as did DRX. So, yeah. I mean, I like the players here on Talon. Oh, the only difference is Patty Fan has announced that he is taking a break and he is going inactive, most likely due to his wrist. So hopefully, just regardless of professional play, I just really hope his wrist can heal up fully and he's able to, not be like bothered by it no matter where he goes and what he does. So that's all I hope for. But otherwise, yeah, I like the players. I mean, I haven't had any interactions with Governor, I guess. But I have nothing against players, but it didn't look great. It didn't look great. There was nothing in it to tell me like, oh, Talon, this is their color. This is what they're going for as a team. So we'll have to wait and see. It was fairly early on after the announcement, so hopefully they were just trying to work out the kinks and they can continue to build on it, but not very promising so far. Now, last but not least, DFM. Where to begin? So we talked about, I think I talked about it just during a stream. I don't think it was part of the last one we did, right? Yeah, because I just wrote it in today. Yeah, so if you missed it, they announced their new roster. They brought in the Crazy Raccoons core. They brought in JoJo from Fennel. They brought in C's as a 6-man from Vero. Suggest is actually the only one sticking around, which I would not have seen coming, but so they played at the Riot 1 Invitational, and it was a dumpster fire. There's no other way to put it. I'll be honest, I haven't watched all of it, but the results were a dumpster fire, and we just recently, right before recording this video on stream, we were watching the Breeze game against Zeta, and they were just getting farmed. But one thing I noticed during that Breeze game was that they seem to be playing what I like to call Shadow Valorant, right? So they throw out these abilities, and they move assuming that it worked. They're like, oh yeah, like we're gonna fake them out, and they're gonna think we're gonna go A, and then we're gonna hit them in B, and it's just like, but you had no follow-up to that. You had no way of it knowing if it actually worked or not, right? You're just fighting your own inner demons, and then you just get farmed on the aim department as well by a 22 kill Reyna Depp, or Depp Reyna. And for you can't do that anymore, is what I'm saying. You used to be able to do that because everyone reacted very predictably in the early days of Valorant, but you just can't do that anymore. People are more willing to take aim duels. People are more willing to take a risk to get information, right? They'll peek out to get information, or they'll invest early drones to get information, something that even I used to be against, right? But these days, like, if you put a lot of pressure in, some teams will just be like, oh, 1 minute 20, like, we just saw a bunch of these abilities. We just need to know now. We need to know now if they're still here or not. And they send out an owl drone, right? And if they are still there, it's like, okay, everyone hold on default. If they're not, we're like, okay, it was a fake, right? People are much more willing to take these higher risk moves to get solid information. So you can't just push and assume that, the fake worked or that the pressure worked. You can't do that. And it's concerning because regardless of, sure, it was very early on after the roster announcement. I mean, we don't know how long they've been screwing together, but sure, there's other things to consider, and there's still some time before the kickoff next year. We saw the announcement recently that it's kicking off on February 17th for Pacific. So there's actually still 2 months. Okay, you have some good time to work on stuff, but that's a very fundamental mentality about the game, in my opinion. And it needs to change. If they play like that against these other teams, it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be pretty, right? All these other teams have players who have had experience against the top teams that know just not to be shaken up by that. So you can't be doing that. So hopefully they change that, because otherwise I have no reason to change them from my power rankings. I'm sorry for any DFM fans. I was excited for the announcement. I do think it's a good partnership, right? With Crazy Raccoons being much more of kind of the basically marketing and PR part of DFM now. That's cool. It's a good project. And the thing is I mean, Suggest is mechanically good. JoJo's had some decent calling in the past. Although I do think maybe JoJo's hitting a cap now. Who knows? I mean, obviously, like Neth and May have had their moments in Challengers Japan. I mean, Popagachi as well. They're part of the same core from Crazy Raccoons. It's an okay team, but even on paper, it's not like I would have ever looked at this team and be like, "Oh, that has some potential to like be top 3," right? I would not have ever said that. But after having seen, again, it's not about losing. You can lose and still instill some promise, or at least hope, right? Of, oh, at least this is what they were trying to do. Or I see this is what they were doing. They were just getting out-dueled, and like Depp was just on top of that day. Like, you could have moments like that. But again, I'll go back and watch the other VODs. But the Breeze game I watched against Zeta Division, it's a lot of it's a lot of just boxing against shadows, fighting against shadows that don't exist, and they're getting played into their own hand. So it's not very promising. Meanwhile, Bleed, they did okay. They also played at Riot 1, but EA couldn't go, so it was the coach, Lagia, stepping in. But I think they did okay. Perhaps not as promising as I would have thought. But, 7 rounds against a Na'Vi that looks to be on fire, right? Really good. 13-5. Took Zeta to overtime. I think that's fine. I've only watched highlights from this game. I watched a little bit of the other ones, but... So, we'll wait and see. I'm thinking, like, maybe we rated them a bit too high, and there is the question of, well, is EA going to be playing Duelist, or is it really going to be Darion back there? But then, is EA going to be Flex? Because, personally, I have a hard time seeing that, just given his playstyle, but we'll have to wait and see. Okay, with that said, we will do a quick little power ranking here. However, the real power ranking will come after this weekend, where Convergence happens, and we finally get a look at Gen.G and Global Esports. All right, but we'll do a quick one because we now have all rosters with what for now is their confirmed starting 5 for 2024. We just watched a bunch of them at AVL as well, so I think it's a good time to talk. First, let's just put in. I hate to do it, but let's just put in some known values, okay? So, here are known values. I am not concerned about Paper X continuing to still be what I would consider the strongest team. People are like, they were trolling in AVL, etc. They always try new stuff. Even at VCT matches, they will try new stuff. And then, okay, the only thing I would say, really, they were clearly not, like, giving it their all to prep for 2024 was, they were giving Jing stage time because they wanted to, go through another tournament with Jing and try to lift a trophy. That's cool. I'm all for it. The only map I would say where I was like, okay, this was maybe you were trialing too many things was when they had something on Euro and Forsaken on Breach on that Breeze game. That was like kind of weird. That was like, well, I don't know what's going on here. I think that was against Sentinels. We can actually check it out right now. Yeah. Like this was weird. This was a little weird. But other than that, I think they were just being Paper X, right? And they played really well. So very promising. I think they continue to have a really high ceiling. I think Magnet's going to fit in just fine. Jing's movement is just so crazy mid-battle that I think it's hard to top that. But Magnet was still slotting right in. He was working off of, util very well. His teammates util, like Devise, Sky. And then he was also playing very aggressive to really push the agenda here for Paper X. He can still flex the double controller. Very, very good. The fact that they can flex Magnet now on top of potentially something on his, maybe like the Breach or something is good. That's good news. They're not stuck having to play double duelist on most maps. So Paper X continues to have a really good ceiling. Now, here's where things get a little interesting. So back then, about 2-3 weeks ago, I put T1 really low because I was like, you have 7 people on your roster. I don't know what's going on. I don't have faith in this, etc. Now we've seen they're sticking with a core 5. Looks really good, and they're cooking a lot. I like it. I like what they're cooking. The question to me here is the next couple of slots to me are between these teams. And there's some potential here as well. Right? Like, these are the next 2 tiers in my book. RRQ, I will admit, it's a lot of Hopium and Hypium, because obviously we haven't seen them, so maybe it's not that fair. But I still think they're above Zeta Division, so I won't budge on that. But from what we saw from DRX, I don't think they're very strong. the core five. It did not instill a lot of confidence. Whatever magic they found at Champions, it was not here for AVL. So I was, in my head, I was already ranking T1 above DRX in terms of strength. However, then DRX makes that announcement with Flashback and Foxy and I moving up. While I think that's very promising for a DRX, I think in some ways that puts them even a further step behind, right? They're taking one step back so they can move 2 steps forward. And in that world, from what I've seen, I think I rate T1 above. Now, at that point, the question becomes, do I still rate DRX above RRQ? It's an interesting idea. It's hard because we haven't seen RRQ, but the DRX with Flashback and Foxy 9, I think it's still going to be rough around the edges. Right? We might come back to fix this, but this is kind of where I stand here. And in that case... Oh, wait, where did Bleed go? Ooh. The thing is I mean, yeah, Ye wasn't there, but they played okay at Riot 1. This is tough. Okay, hold on. Let's stick with some known values here. I'm sorry, Global Esports. I mean, happy to be proven otherwise at Convergence, but despite Talon not looking great at Clash of Nations, well, we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait. Oh, I don't know. Talon didn't look that great at Clash of Nations. Let's stick with that. Yep, G gets a bump back up. Now, Bleed, Zeta, Team Secret, Gen.G. Okay, so let's put it this way. Who do I think would be in the bottom 4, right? Like, if we were to go with a 4-3-4, a 3-4-4 tier, who do I think would be in the bottom 4? Gen.G, Team Secret, Zeta, Bleed. Oh, man, if I had to choose out of those, I think I would choose Zeta. Maybe Bleed. I haven't watched the VODs in depth here. Until we watch them, I think. Gen.G versus Zeta. Is it just me, or does the G look so weird in this font? I don't know why I just realized that. Gen.G versus Zeta. The thing is back then I said I don't think their ranking would change depending on who their 5th is, and that actually remains true. So I that's the only reason I'm going to stick with this. And that means after AVL, once we have known the starting 5, this is how I rate them. Now, it's weird because this doesn't necessarily mean I think that's how the end of year result is going to pan out, but I think this is how much strength I would put in. Like, this is how much I favor them, right? Paper X still on top. T1, they've given me a lot of hope and promise with their starting 5 at AVL. RQ, I still just have a lot of faith in. Really just feel that they were missing that 2% that they've now covered with Estrella and Jemkin. DRX, it's more a result of being shoved out by these, but they just haven't given a lot more hope yet for the future. If anything, I think they're taking a step back to move 2 steps forward. Team Secret, again, another team we haven't seen yet, but I just feel like they have a really solid core, and they're bringing in newer talent that's mechanically gifted. So hopefully they should still kind of be that quote-unquote gatekeeper team in my head. Obviously, I've pushed Bleed down just a bit, because the thing is what I'm thinking about is, while Bleed, I've had a lot of faith in mechanically, and I think their core is very good. The question is how fast can they adapt against their teammates? I even think some of their prep is good. I think their anti-stratting can be very good as well. But when you're playing week to week to week to week, you don't have that much time to anti-strat against every single opponent. It gets a little draining. And I don't know if they have the experience to adapt in-game without, aside from the timeouts. So that's where I'm starting to push them maybe down just a bit. I think Zeta's very promising. I think they have a high ceiling. I think there's a lot to look forward to long term, but their current shape does not look that strong to me. Gen.G, we'll just have to wait and see. I think there's a good chance Gen.G can bump up here. And then the rest, the story tells itself. I'm okay with this. However, we will do one last final power ranking. Looking forward to 2024 VCT Pacific next week once Convergence is over. At that point, we'll have seen Gen.G and GE as well. So the only teams we wouldn't have seen is Bleed and RRQ. During that time, I'll take a closer look at Talon's game from Clash of Nations, as well as Bleeds from Riot 1, along with DFM. So we'll do one final one next week. But this is basically just based on the starting rosters that have now been confirmed for all of our Pacific teams. This is where I'm thinking they rank up. I don't know. I think it's exciting. I mean, first of all, just DRX not even being in the top 3 for me is very exciting. The fact that this is even conceivable is exciting to me. So, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. We now have the starting roster, starting 5 from all teams. Take a look throughout the video, see what the rosters look like. Let me know, who do you think's coming out on top? Who are you most excited about? Which starting 5 are you most excited about? And also, is DFM going to win a game in 2024? That's the biggest question here for VCT Pacific. If you liked the video, please leave a like and a comment down below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and we'll return next week for our final power ranking ahead of 2024 for VCT Pacific. I'll see you guys then.